This could be the moment that breaks Formula One. The best driver in the world is thinking about quitting. Not rumors, not speculation. His own words. Is it even worth it? And just days after saying that, he didn't show up to a critical Formula One test. Instead, he went to drive a completely different car, on a completely different track, in a completely different category. That's not frustration. That's a message. Because right now, Formula One has a problem it cannot afford. A four-time world champion, who no longer enjoys driving his own car. And when that happens, everything is at risk. Fans, teams, the future of the sport itself. Behind closed doors, emergency meetings have already started. Because if Verstappen walks away, this isn't just a loss. It's a collapse of everything this new era is built on. And here's the part no one is telling you. This didn't start in Japan. This has been building for months. And what pushed him to this point is far bigger than one bad race. Subscribe now, because what's really happening behind this retirement threat could change Formula One forever. At first, it didn't look like a breaking point, because from the outside, Verstappen was still Verstappen. On track, focused, competing, doing what he always does. But if you looked closer, something was different. Not in his speed, not in his results, in his attitude. Because this wasn't frustration anymore. It wasn't the usual radio messages. It wasn't the typical complaints about balance or grip. This felt distant, like someone going through the motions. And that's where it starts to become serious. Because drivers at this level don't just lose motivation. Something has to push them there. And in Verstappen's case, it wasn't one thing. It was a combination. A build-up, race after race, moment after moment, until it reached a point where continuing no longer felt natural. Because the biggest issue is not performance. It's feeling. What the car gives you. What it takes away. And right now, the car is taking more than it gives. Unpredictable behavior. Energy systems interfering with instinct. Moments where the driver is no longer fully in control. And for someone like Verstappen, that's everything. Because his entire driving style is built on precision. On knowing exactly what the car will do before it does it. And when that disappears, so does the connection. And once that connection is gone, you don't just struggle. You start questioning. Because suddenly, it's not about how to go faster. It's about why you're doing it at all. And that's the shift we're seeing. From competition to evaluation. Because listen to how he speaks now. It's not emotional. It's not reactive. It's calculated. Almost detached. Like someone stepping back and looking at the bigger picture. And in that bigger picture, Formula One is no longer the only option. Because while all of this is happening, he's finding something else. Something simpler. Something more direct. Driving at the Nürburgring. No complex energy systems. No unpredictable behavior. Just pure driving. And that contrast changes everything. Because once you experience both, you start comparing. And if one gives you more satisfaction than the other, the decision becomes clearer. And that's what makes this moment so dangerous for Formula One. Because Verstappen is no longer dependent on the sport. He's choosing it. Every weekend. Every race. And when something becomes a choice, it can also be left behind. And inside the paddock, they understand that. That's why the reaction has been so fast. Because this isn't about losing a driver. It's about losing the driver. The reference. The benchmark. The one everyone measures themselves against. And without him, the entire narrative changes. Because dominance without the dominant driver doesn't feel the same. Competition without the main figure loses weight. And that's why these emergency meetings matter so much. Because they're not just discussing performance. They're discussing retention. How to keep him. How to bring back that connection. How to make Formula One feel like Formula One again. But here's the problem. You can't force enjoyment. You can't engineer passion. And you definitely can't fake it at this level. So now, everything leads to one critical moment. One opportunity. To change how this feels. Because if the next races don't deliver, if the experience doesn't improve, if that connection doesn't come back, then this stops being a warning and becomes a decision, a real one. And when that decision comes, it won't just affect Verstappen. It will affect everything around him. Because if he walks away, it won't be because he couldn't win. It will be because Formula One stopped giving him a reason to stay. And this is where everything becomes real. Because up to this point, this could still be interpreted as frustration. A phase. A difficult start to a new era. Something that time could fix. But then, his actions stopped matching that idea. Because when a driver is frustrated, he pushes harder. He shows up. He works more. He tries to fix it. Verstappen did the opposite. He stepped away, not from racing, but from Formula One itself, skipping a key test, letting a junior driver take his place, choosing a completely different car, a completely different environment. And that's the detail that changes everything. Because this is no longer about struggling. It's about disengaging. And disengagement is always the final stage before a decision. Because once a driver disconnects emotionally, the rest follows quickly. Performance drops, motivation fades, and the question stops being how to improve, and becomes whether it's worth continuing. And inside Formula One, they understand that pattern very well. They've seen it before, with champions, with legends, drivers who reached a point where the sport no longer gave them what they needed. And once that point is reached, it's very hard to reverse. But here's what makes this situation different. Verstappen is not at the end of his career. He's not declining. He's not struggling physically. He's still at his peak. Which means this is not a natural exit. It's a choice. And that's what makes it dangerous. Because a choice can happen at any moment. There's no timeline. No gradual goodbye. Just a decision. And everything changes overnight. That's why the meetings are happening now. Not later. Not after more races. Now. Because the FIA, the teams, Liberty Media, they all see the same risk. If they wait, it might be too late. Because once a driver like Verstappen decides, he doesn't hesitate. He doesn't negotiate publicly. He acts. And that's what they're trying to prevent. But here's the uncomfortable truth. This is not something they can fix with one change, or one update, or one better race. Because what Verstappen is reacting to is deeper. It's the direction of the sport itself. The way the cars behave. The way racing feels. The shift from instinct to system management. And if that direction doesn't change, then nothing else really matters. Because even if the car improves, even if results improve, the feeling might not. And for a driver like him, feeling is everything. So now, Formula One is facing a problem it cannot solve quickly. How do you bring back something intangible? Something emotional? Something that can't be engineered or regulated? Because that's what's missing. Not speed, not technology. Connection. Between driver and machine. Between driver and sport. And that's why everything now builds toward one moment. Not just the next race, but the next experience. Because if that experience doesn't change, if it doesn't reconnect him, then the outcome becomes predictable. And it's not the one Formula One wants. Because losing Verstappen is not just losing a driver. It's losing credibility, losing intensity, losing the reference point of the entire grid. And once that disappears, you don't just replace it. You feel the absence. Every race. Every moment. So now the question is no longer hidden. It's right there. In every meeting. In every decision. In every change being considered. How do you give him a reason to stay? Because if they can't answer that, then this isn't just a threat. It's the beginning of an ending. One that could redefine Formula One faster than anyone is prepared for. And this is where Formula One runs out of time. Because everything up to this point has been reaction. Meetings. Discussions. Internal pressure. But now, they need results. Real ones. On track. Because you can't convince a driver like Verstappen with promises. You can't tell him things will improve. You have to show him. Immediately. And that's where the pressure shifts completely. From words to reality. Because the next race is no longer just another weekend. It's a test. Not of performance. Of belief. Because right now, Verstappen is not deciding based on results. He's deciding based on feeling. And that's much harder to change. Because you can fix a car. You can improve speed. You can adjust strategy. But restoring belief, that's different. That takes something deeper. Something that reminds him why he started. Why he stayed. Why it mattered. And if that doesn't happen, then everything becomes very simple. Because once a driver stops believing in the direction of the sport, he stops investing in it. Mentally. Emotionally. Completely. And that's when the decision becomes inevitable. But here's the part that makes this even more critical. Formula One is not just trying to keep Verstappen. It's trying to protect what he represents. Because right now, he is the benchmark. The reference. The driver every other driver measures themselves against. Take that away, and the entire grid shifts. Not just competitively. Psychologically. Because beating the best is what defines greatness. And if the best leaves, that definition becomes unclear. But it goes even deeper than that. Because Verstappen is not just competing. He's validating the era. If he stays, and fights, and wins, then this new generation of Formula One works. It has credibility. It has legitimacy. But if he leaves, especially at his peak, then the question becomes unavoidable. What drove him away? And once that question starts spreading, it doesn't stop. Fans start asking it. Media starts repeating it. Teams start worrying about it. And suddenly, this isn't just about one driver anymore. It's about the sport itself. Because losing a champion is one thing. Losing a champion who chooses to leave, that's something else. That's a statement. And statements like that echo for years. So now, everything depends on what happens next. Not in theory. Not in meetings. On track. Because if the experience changes, if the car feels right, if the racing feels real again, then maybe this story stops here. Maybe this becomes a warning that was heard in time. But if it doesn't, if nothing changes, if the same frustrations remain, then the outcome becomes clearer with every lap. Because Verstappen has already shown something important. He doesn't need Formula One to race. He wants to want it. And right now, that desire is fading. And once it's gone, there's no contract, no meeting, no decision that can bring it back? Which means Formula One is now facing its most important question in years. Not how to make the cars faster. Not how to make the sport bigger. But how to make the best driver in the world want to stay. Because if they fail to answer that, then this isn't just a crisis. It's a turning point. The moment where Formula One didn't lose a driver. It lost its center.